shock and outrage around Europe.
Managers, players, pundits condemning the Super League project.
Manchester United fans have stormed their own stadium.
English football fans rebel against the owners of the clubs they love.
Football's for the fans. It's not for these Super League owners.
Fans say that billionaire owners are treating English football as a global cash cow and cutting clubs off from their communities.
The moment Chelsea fans got what they wanted.
Football's controversial European Super League has collapsed just 2 days after it was announced.
Football clubs in England are part of our history, heritage, community and so on. And as such, they should be protected.
Yes, you need money along the way to run it, but without fans, football's nothing.
England's football authorities claim they have rules that protect the integrity of the league and prevent unsuitable owners from buying clubs.
You should have fans from every club representing the club, not just greedy billionaires from Russia, China, wherever.
How are you?
We show how the rules governing football ownership are being abused and that criminal funds from abroad can be laundered through the English game.
Good to meet you. One of the main investors, we got a criminal record in China.
You just dress it in the right way. I have many other tricks I can play too.
Undercover reporters are secretly filming a middleman who fixes deals for wealthy foreigners to buy English clubs.
I was with Mel yesterday. He's appointed me to sell the club.
The reporters say they represent a Chinese investor convicted of bribery and money laundering who wants to buy a football club to clean his money.
We're talking of £99 million, 100 million.
The middleman wants our fictitious criminal to buy a club that has twice been champions of England.
Mel Morris, pleased to meet you. Nice to meet you. Stadium itself, 33,500 people capacity.
We reveal how the middleman's previous deals took 2 other English clubs to the brink of financial collapse.
The fans felt they'd been taken for a ride.
The dealmaker's associates include a former Scotland Yard detective who can monitor the football authority's communications.
There would be times where you could use trusted third parties to help you get the information you're looking for.
He can help our criminal obtain an EU passport with a new name and the green light to own an English football club.
And we've done this many, many times for others who I can are in a worse position than yours.
Here is to success.
Hi, Benji. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Christopher Samuelson is an offshore trust specialist and football deal maker. He works with accountants and lawyers to hide clients' identities and wealth. He became involved in football after setting up a sponsorship company.
This is 1982, because Bobby Moore was captain of England, won the World Cup, captain of West Ham, famous figure. Bobby called me one day and he said, Chris, look, we can buy Chelsea Football Club. We negotiated, we agreed to buy Chelsea for £800,000.
£800,000?
1982. But the problem was the access to the ground. And so we didn't do it. That's how Ken Bates bought it instead. Listen, cheers.
Cheers.
And so that's how I started football clubs.
Over a series of meetings in London hotels, our undercover reporters say they represent 3 Chinese investors who want to purchase a football club. 2 investors hold 20% each. The majority investor, who we call Mr. X, has criminal convictions.
You got some issues in China?
We name our undercover reporter Billy.
The Chinese phone said he got some money cases. They're paying the local officials.
Can I offer you a drink, Mr. Samuelson?
Well, I think we can do the drink.
Yes.
Yes.
Angie is our second undercover reporter. She's acting as Billy's assistant.
Before the problem came out of the warrant, he escaped back to Hong Kong safely. And then they made a conviction of him without
him being there.
Being there in the court with his absence.
Okay, the usual rubbish.
Yeah.
I'm in the real world. I don't understand all this.
Billy tells Samuelson that Mr. X is very rich, fled China with his illegally obtained wealth, smuggled his funds out of China through Macau casinos, and received a 7-year prison sentence in absentia for bribery and money laundering.
I will have no problem with any of it. And the other thing, if he wants help with moving assets and he wants secure locations, I can do that too. Then I can organize financial institutions who will hold it for him. Banks where he can move his money to. I have a close relationship with banks in Liechtenstein.
So we have a bombshell here that the prospective owner has paid money to public officials, or in any other terms, bribed public officials, which is obviously a criminal offence around the world, both in China and the UK. Now, as a professional, as a company information agent, that should be the end of a conversation rather than the beginning of a conversation, and should lead to that reporting to the police that is under UK law in the Proceeds of Crime Act.
Samuelson has lived in countries including the UK, Ireland, Switzerland and Spain. Until recently, he had a villa in Mallorca, which was sold for just under $1 million. He's managed billions of dollars for the world's super rich. Yet few know his name.
Christopher Samuelson's been described as the ultimate man in the shadows. He's someone who works with a group of people, lawyers, accountants, to help people hide their money. He's one of the most powerful, influential people in finance that you never even heard of.
He was born to an affluent family in southern England. His parents appeared in society magazines such as Tatler. Samuelson was sent to a private boarding school in England and did further studies in Grenoble and Munich. In the late 1960s, he moved to Wall Street.
He had what we think is his first job in New York with some very, very well-connected investment bankers. Samuelson got into the world of offshore finance and trusts in the 1980s, and he worked for a company called Valmet, which he and others built into one of the biggest offshore trust companies in the world.
A trust company is set up when someone gives money to a trusted third party to look after it. It's often used to hide the identity of the ultimate owner of the wealth.
For decades, he's managed the personal business affairs of some of the world's wealthiest people, moving money into offshore trusts. Some people have called him a magician. It has been said that he can make an elephant disappear.
Samuelson reassures Billy that the identity of our fictitious criminal, Mr. X, will remain hidden, except to the Football League.
Now you explain this to me. It will not be known that he owns this football club. Nobody will find out unless he tells them. The only person who will know is the Football League, because we're going to have to tell them. We will give them the minimum information, just enough to get it done. That's it.
The English Football League is the body that governs the divisions below the Premier League. It has a set of rules called the Owners and Directors Test to protect the image and integrity of the league and the well-being of its clubs. One of its key aims is to prevent criminals owning clubs and using football to launder money. It bans from owning a club anybody with an unspent criminal conviction and a sentence of at least 12 months imprisonment. The league can also require proposed owners to provide evidence of the ultimate source and sufficiency of funds to acquire control of or invest in a club.
If you want to buy a football club, under the Owners and Directors Test, there's two things that you have to satisfy. First of all, do you have evidence that the buyers are of good repute in the sense that they have no present convictions? The second thing that the EFL are looking for is, do you have sufficient resources to run the club, normally for a period of 2 years?
Don't worry about it. I'll come with an idea about how we can structure it so we defeat the EFL. To create the buyer, we'll say his business was real estate investment and other sectors. Watch me, I'll hold a gun to their head. I can pressure the football league, don't worry about it, it'll be fruit. And if we have to threaten them with a legal action, watch them fall over, okay?
Samuelson says he can thwart efforts by the Football League to find out about Mr. X.
Sometimes they appoint one of these investigating firms to do a report. If they appoint somebody, we'll know which one is doing it. Then we'll deal with that. The main thing is, do you have the money? And the fact it's sitting in Christian Hook's law firm trust account is a huge effect on them.
Christian Hook is a partner at Gunnar Cook, a London-based law firm.
He handled for us the legal work on Aston Villa, on Reading. He's done it on about 5 clubs, actually. Those are the 2 I got him to do. I know him very well. He's very efficient. He's very discreet, no leaks.
Another member of Samuelson's team is Andrew Obolensky.
He's a chartered accountant and a commercial banker by background. He's the best chartered accountant I know. He's extremely discreet. Yeah, I can help here. You come to the right person.
The deal would involve Samuelson becoming a director of the club and receiving a large fee.
We charge 3% on the value of when we're buying or selling a club.
3%?
3%.
Each member of his team would charge additional fees. He names the clubs he claims are for sale.
If you wanted to buy a top 6 club, there's 2 you could buy today. Roman Abramovich will sell, but he wants $3 billion. I mean, Tottenham, we could buy Tottenham, but it's £2 billion. And I know Daniel Levy, the chairman of Tottenham, very well, and Joe Lewis, who's the other major shareholder.
Billy says the Chinese investors are prepared to spend up to £150 million, with a further £100 million for investment. They were looking for a sleeping giant, a once great club with a big fan base. Perhaps a team in the 2nd tier of English football.
You've got a club like Derby County, which Mel Morris owns. Mel has invested so far £160 million in Derby County. Nottingham Forest is another good club. Remember, Nottingham Forest won the European Cup, which is the forerunner of the Champions League. So they reach the very top of football. Another one is Millwall. But Millwall belongs to a guy called John Belson, who I know well, he's American. He bought it off a map. He didn't go to see it.
He later suggested in an email that Billy's investor buy a top-flight Spanish club.
I would buy Seville because it has all the desirable attributes. Good profit that can be enhanced, brand that can be promoted in China and marketed all over Asia, the best scouting network in Latin America, and an outstanding academy.
Samuelson presented Billy with an acquisition plan drawn up by his firm, Sockfin. The asking price for just under 90% of Seville was $217 million. But Derby had a key advantage for Samuelson.
I remember I talked to you about Derby County. I was with Mel yesterday. He's appointed me to sell the club. If it was Derby, it was said with Mel. Mel's totally confidential.
There's the cross. Oh, and how about that? That really is special.
Samuelson provides a step-by-step guide that would allow convicted criminal and money launderer Mr. X to buy a football club. First, create an offshore account using a trust company. He uses one that he claims he part owns.
Finsbury was a trust company I started. in 1983. It's the biggest trust company in Gibraltar. I still own 35% through one of my trusts. Finsbury look after about 6,000 bank accounts around the world. They have probably 5,000 companies and trusts. And they have assets under administration of somewhere around 50 billion. What we normally do with a Gibraltar company is we form it with just £100 capital, just the minimum, and they issue 2 shares, or 3 shares, or how many shares. Cheers. Nobody can ever get behind who the shareholders are in the public domain. No media can penetrate because it's held in what we call nominee names.
Shareholders can legally appoint nominees to hold shares for their benefit if they don't want the shares registered in their name. The nominees' names are made public. The names of the real shareholders remain a secret.
Finsbury uses some of our nominee shareholder companies, and they issue a declaration of trust in favour of who the real shareholder is. That's an internal document. You have copies of it. You have the original, of course, and there's a copy in Gibraltar and Finsbury. Nobody else knows.
Samuelson creates an offshore company for Mr. X. He sends an itemised invoice from Finsbury Trust. The bill includes charges for providing corporate directors and nominee shareholders. The total, $9,400.
The media's going to say, who are the shareholders? We have some Chinese investors. That's all we'll say. I'm one of the leading specialists in this kind of work. I did it for Reading.
And he floats the cross in, and that's the goal that fires Reading into the Premier League. Just look at their supporters.
I bought Reading Football Club, but I bought it for a Russian family called Zingarovich. We bought it for £25 million.
I certainly had concerns. We knew nothing about the company behind the funding. We knew that Thames Sport Investments, as it was called, was going to be set up and registered in Gibraltar. Why would that need to be registered in Gibraltar? What are they trying to hide?
When I bought Reading Football Club for Anton Zingarovich, it was really his father's money, all of it, Boris.
Boris Zingarovich is the Russian owner of a huge pulp and paper company.
We know that Zingarovich Sr., Boris, had a massive fortune from paper pulp, but we were also told that he wasn't involved in this. So there was the obvious question of, well, where is the money coming from?
Anton didn't have any money. So I got his father to gift the money to me. Okay? Boom, done. I didn't clear Boris, I cleared Anton. That's it, they didn't argue about it at all.
But Anton Zingarovich didn't have the funds to sustain the club.
And there's the final whistle. It sends Reading down after just one season in the top flight, and their fans are distraught.
The fans at this point just felt they'd been taken for a ride. Suddenly we turned into just another club in crisis.
The Russian owner sold the club.
He left Reading holding a big bill that he'd run up with no money left to pay it.
Mr. Gorbachev finally brought the curtain down on the Soviet Union.
I must end my duty as President of USSR.
In the 1990s, many of Samuelson's clients were politically connected Russian businessmen who became billionaires after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
We were very big in Russia after the perestroika period. I knew all the people who become oligarchs. I've been to Moscow at least 500 times.
The oligarchs acquired state-owned companies cheaply or for free, giving them control over most of the Russian economy. and quickly making them unimaginably rich.
Samuelson, through his company Valmet, became one of the main money managers for Russian oligarchs and helped them to move their money out of Russia and into jurisdictions like Gibraltar and the Isle of Man.
I met Roman Abramovich in Moscow. Roman became a client. One day he was here and I said to him, there's going to be political change in Russia. You should protect yourself. You need to get an image. And you love football, so why not buy a football club? We looked at buying Tottenham Hotspur, but getting to Tottenham is a pain. You have to go on public transport, or it takes an hour and a half to drive it. And a helicopter, you could do it in 5 minutes, but you can't land when you get there. There's nowhere to land. We were coming back, and he said, what's that? I said, that's Stamford Bridge. Chelsea Football Club. Why can't I buy that one? A week later, he owned it, £94 million.
Samuelson says he helped two of Russia's richest oligarchs move hundreds of millions of dollars into a web of offshore trusts. Boris Berezovsky made a fortune from oil, cars and media. He fell out with Russia's President Putin and fled to the UK. Another billionaire, Badri Patakashvili, also ended up in the UK after falling out with Putin. Both died in suspicious circumstances. Al-Jazira's I-Unit has obtained a secret report written by the Netherlands Financial Crime Agency. It relates to an investigation into the links between oligarchs and Samuelson's companies.
This document is a legal request to the Swiss authorities asking them for assistance with an investigation into Christopher Samuelson and his companies Valmet and MTM, Mutual Trust Management.
The draft report says that some of Samuelson's clients had been the subject of criminal investigation, and his companies were suspected of corrupt practices.
The report makes a number of serious allegations, the main one of which is that they suspect that Christopher Samuelson is the de facto leader of an international money laundering organization.
They say he's guilty of habitual money laundering. The oligarchs Mikhail Khodorkovsky, Berezovsky and Badri, as well as businessman Platon Lebedev, were all clients of Samuelson's companies. The report says Samuelson advised Khodorkovsky and Lebedev to purchase Yukos, and Berezovsky and Badri to buy Sibneft, Russia's two largest energy companies. Khodorkovsky was, at that time, the wealthiest oligarch.
The most famous one is Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who used to be the big shareholder of Benetech, which owned Yukos, the biggest oil company in Russia.
Khodorkovsky was another of Samuelson's clients who fell out with Putin.
And he spent 11 years in jail. They convicted him of something he never did. And they wanted to steal his assets anyway.
As well as the oligarchs, the Dutch document says Samuelson's clients included the two largest organized crime families in the UK. It also alleges that Samuelson advised Kurdish organizations how to structure their finances to prevent suspicions and accusations of money laundering.
The scale of what they're looking at is really, really enormous. But interestingly, Samuelson hasn't been convicted of any offences, and he's always at great pains to stress that.
In 2011, Samuelson was named in court papers in the United States as the subject of multiple high-profile money laundering investigations. In another case, he was called a crook and a thief and a liar. Samuelson said the allegations were farcical.
Oh, what a spectacular save!
Samuelson then discusses another strategy that will give Mr. X the green light to buy an English football club.
You're a good guy. We can always look at getting another passport for him. I could get him a Cypriot passport, for example.
Samuelson could help Mr. X obtain a European Union passport and change his name.
He'll give himself a new name. I have a friend who handles this. He's been running his own security company for many years. He works hand in glove with us. He can do all kinds of things, like tap telephones and so on.
Samuelson sends the friend a text message.
Okay, I sent a message to people. He's in the undercover world, security and so on. He looks after a number of clients who have similar issues to your man, okay? He's been spent to have done it for Russians who had a similar problem.
Keith Hunter is a former Scotland Yard detective who left the police in 1997. He formed Risk Management, a private investigation company, and now runs Animus. Its services include due diligence, personal profiling, integrity testing, domestic investigations, and surveillance. Hunter's clients have included the oligarch Boris Berezovsky and James Ibori, a Nigerian politician jailed for fraud. Alexander Litvinenko, the former Russian spy murdered with polonium in a London restaurant, had worked for Hunter as a source of information.
He knows football very well, too.
Hunter has received Samuelson's message and calls back.
Hi, Keith. I have a situation. We're in the process of buying another football club. Secondly, one of our lead investors is Hong Kong Chinese. He was big in China and he got attacked by the Chinese government, usual thing like Russia. And so he needs another passport. How quickly can we get a Cyprus one, money, no object?
Billy meets Hunter to find out more about the services he provides.
You're waiting for me. Hi, lovely to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Billy's assistant this time is another undercover reporter. We called her Alice.
And so this is my place.
Hunter explains what he does to help his clients.
If he's got a competitor that he's really aggressive with, we go after him. We go after him. With whatever ammunition you've got, let's go after him.
Could you find out the competitor financial situation like banks?
Yeah.
Bank accounts, so the details?
Yeah. Banks, credit cards, lifestyle. Have they got a mistress going on? Is there anything that we could damage their reputation with?
For example, if we want to get the client's competitors' telephone record in the past few months, could you also get them for the client?
We could potentially get that.
Hunter's business activities resulted in a police inquiry in 2006 involving a corruption case in London's Metropolitan Police. He was not charged. In 2012, Hunter was arrested on suspicion of seeking to corrupt a police officer in the James Ibori fraud case. Again, he was not charged.
Sometimes it's impossible. Sometimes it's illegal. Sometimes you can't do these things. But there will be times where you could use trusted third parties to help you get the information you're looking for.
The I-Unit has obtained an internal report written by Scotland Yard's anti-corruption unit. It says in 2007 that Hunter had attracted their attention for some time. Intelligence strongly indicates that Risk Management, Hunter's former company, was an aggressive corrupter of police officers. It says Risk employees exploit former colleagues to corruptly obtain sensitive information, and they attempt to recruit serving police staff.
If I give you the email address, could you get that email?
Again, that would be for third parties to do, but it would be something. We could ask people if they would do it. You know, other people do those things, and I'm very happy to organise an introduction.
But how can you trust it?
Because you build up trust. You know, my people will have relationships with people that can do things that we can't do in-house.
Hunter is offering a range of services here which fall on a spectrum of legality. So from one end, you have following people, which is distasteful and could verge on harassment, through to things which are illegal and breach data privacy laws, like accessing bank statements, accessing emails, and accessing telephone records. And whilst Hunter talks about third parties and distances himself from this activity, the way in which he talks implies that he has done this before and his third parties have done this before as well.
Keith, you want a fork or chopsticks?
I'll try both.
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hunter says that he is also involved in brokering deals to sell football clubs.
We're about 5 weeks away from closing on Hull. Hull Football Club is being bought by some people we know, and we've organised that. Not Chris, but myself and a colleague. So that I think that's done. Buying it from the Egyptian family, the Allams.
He says he's also working on the sale of a club that at that time was in the Premier League.
I think we'll get it from the meeting I've just had. A mandate for a Premiership club, but it's 200 million asking price, which is cheap for a Premiership team. Right? Don't mention too much.
Only my clients in Asia.
Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Bournemouth.
And that's the goal that means Bournemouth finish top of the Championship.
Samuelson presents Billy with another way to ensure that Mr. X's identity is concealed from the Football League. We said that Mr. X would own 60% of the club, while two minority investors would have 20% each.
I have to say who the shareholders are. The other two shareholders with the 20% each, could we use them as a front for him, short term, and then we change it?
Samuelson would create an offshore company for the three investors. The two minority investors would be the named shareholders and appear to own the club, while Mr. X secretly retains control through a trust fund.
Samuelson will pride himself on the structures that he sets up, these incredibly opaque and sophisticated structures that no investigator, lawyer, government official, tax official, whatever, could ever penetrate.
Samuelson comes up with yet another offshore scheme to prevent the disclosure of Mr. X's true identity.
If the worst came to the worst, I would create an investment fund. I've done this before too. So, create a fund, and no investor holds more than 5%. There's no requirement to disclose who the investor is. It's another trick.
Under this plan, Mr. X controls the club through a master trust. Samuelson forms 20 trusts, and each of the owners, who exist only on paper, holds 5% or less of the club. The master trust, controlled by Mr. X, would be kept secret from the EFL.
So I simply create 21 companies, all of them held by different trusts, but they all go to one top trust, which nobody can see. And I've hidden all the real shareholders behind it. It's a complete block. Boom. It's one structure in effect, but they don't know it. And there you've done it in one go.
We're seeing the enablers offering their services to those that they have just found out have got money laundering offences against them. The public might not always have seen this kind of thing in such a lucid way, because normally it's sort of through bank statements or company records like the Panama Papers, but this is real in front of our eyes. It's the most brazen example I've seen.
I mean, I've done this kind of thing before, and I would have done it with Everton Football Club. Had we invested in Everton, but unfortunately got linked to the media, so we didn't proceed with it. But that's another way of getting around disclosure.
The fans are already celebrating, and here comes Graham Sharp to seal the victory and crown Everton as First Division champions. Howard Kendall with his jubilant players.
The programme right here, right now, simple, same price.
Everton is a Premier League club and founder member of the world's oldest football league. In 2004, a Brunei-based company, led by Samuelson, aimed to buy a controlling stake in the club. Paul Gregg was the director of Everton at the time. Bill Kenwright was chairman.
I first met Christopher Samuelson when he was introduced by Kenwright as a possible investor in the club and suggesting that there would be 30 million being invested in Everton, which I was sceptical about. I was concerned because I thought Samuelson was a very good talker, but I was always concerned that he wouldn't deliver.
The fund's main investor was the Russian tycoon, Boris Zingarovich.
They wanted to hide their identity because they were negotiating a settlement in their pulp and paper business in Russia.
We never saw any records of the structure of the company. There was no sight of any money, no bank statements, no bank letters confirming funds were available.
A British newspaper revealed that Zingarovich was involved in the deal.
Unfortunately, somebody leaked the name of Zingarovich. It's the last thing I wanted.
Samuelson asked his friend Keith Hunter to find the mole.
We knew which journalist had got the story, so we looked at that journalist's telephone records. It's not live, but we did. And we found out who he'd spoken to. One of them was the financial controller in Bill Kenwright's office. So we know who leaked them. So he called his friend, the journalist, and said, I've got a hot story for you. There's a deal being done by Russians called Zingarovich who are buying into Everton football. I could have shot him, never mind. But this is what happened.
How about Chris told me that you did a very amazing job to find who leaked the information of the Russian guys who want to buy Everton.
Yeah. Two individuals that were communicating with someone they shouldn't have been.
Two guys inside the football club?
Yeah, board level.
It caused a big problem for Boris Zingarovich in Russia. We ended up as the lead headline of the Sunday Times.
Morley twists and turns, puts in a lovely cross, and Peter with on the end of it. Villa are 1 up, and they're making sure the European Cup stays in England.
In 2016, Samuelson arranged for a Chinese businessman to buy one of England's oldest football clubs. He installed himself as deputy chairman. The new owner said his aim was to bring back the glory days to Aston Villa.
The most important thing for the club is to be promoted. After that, we're trying to get the club back to the top 6 club in the Premiership.
Tony Xia took Samuelson and senior Aston Villa staff on a promotional trip to Beijing. Rong Tian-he was Xia's executive assistant.
We bring our management team, a new management team, along with the manager Roberto Di Matteo, to Beijing. And we have Rooster Duck in one of the best restaurants in Beijing. Di Matteo, you can see Jamie.
Jamie Banfield is Samuelson's business partner.
You can see Chris, you can see Keith Winers as well.
Keith Winers was the club's chief executive. He left the club when Villa ran into financial trouble. Winers claimed he was forced to resign and sued Xia and Aston Villa. The I-Unit has obtained the statement that Winers prepared for an employment tribunal. He had deep concerns about Xia's finances.
Not a lot was known about him that could be independently verified. My concern was that for a supposed billionaire with a string of companies, Mr. Xia appeared not to have a grasp of basic financial modelling.
We also have a statement that Samuelson sent to the English Football League after a meeting to discuss his suitability to be a director of Aston Villa. Nick Craig, the EFL's head of legal affairs, had described Samuelson as a master of concealment. Craig asked questions about the Dutch investigation into Samuelson's alleged money laundering. Samuelson replied that it was politically driven and conducted at Moscow's request. He writes, the Dutch prosecutor closed the case and dropped all claims against his company. During his discussions with the EFL, Samuelson had an advantage.
When we were dealing with Aston Villa, we were monitoring what the Football League was saying behind the scene. They didn't know this, of course.
He also obtained private records belonging to Villa's chief executive, Keith Wyness.
In the case of Wyness, when we suspended him, he wasn't allowed to talk to the media. Of course, we had the ability to get the telephone records to see who he was talking to, so we could identify what numbers he was calling. He was talking to the media.
In 2018, when the club ran into financial difficulties, Xia wrote to the EFL, pledging to make available sufficient funds to keep the club afloat until May the following year. But he failed to deliver, blaming problems getting money out of China.
Tony Shah claimed to own this, that, and everything else. I said, I don't want to hear about it. I want one asset where you made enough money to get you approved. And he came with one which was 450 million sterling equivalent. Okay, it may not have been his billing, but he claimed it was his. So we put that on the form, just that. How much of that was his own money is a question mark. How much of it was somebody else? That I don't know. He said it was him.
No.
Of course it wasn't the case. No, he was a front. Yeah. And I was sure he was a front.
It was well known that Aston Villa, under Tony, were losing large sums of money. I'm sure Aston Villa fans will be absolutely staggered to hear that Samuelson is accusing Tony of being a front for somebody else.
And here we have a revelation that Samuelson and Tony Shah have concocted this ownership structure which hides who the real owner is of Aston Villa Football Club. And it implies that we potentially don't know where the money came from to buy Aston Villa, which is really problematic when you have any unexplained wealth entering the English Football League or the UK in general.
In 2019, Chinese authorities issued an arrest warrant for Xia. He was later detained for failing to repay loans worth over $30 million.
Tony Shah was very charming when I first met him, but it went to his head. And I'm not sure how much was fact with him either. I'm not quite sure how much substance there is.
The I-Unit has obtained the invoice that Samuelson sent to Shah for his services. It included $1.9 million, part of his fee for the purchase of Aston Villa, $340,000 for arranging a player transfer, $280,000 for a total of 14 weeks' work at $20,000 a week by Samuelson and his partners Banfield and Obolensky, and $40,000 for post-purchase expenses. The total, over $2.5 million. Add to that $1.4 million already paid as part of his 3% commission, a total of nearly $4 million.
Good morning.
Samuelson wants Mr. X to buy Derby County Football Club and is taking our undercover reporters to meet the club's owner.
They've got a lot of good young players coming through.
That morning, Derby was in the news.
Well, let's get more sports news to football. 5 years after leaving as a player, Frank Lampard is back at English Premier League club Chelsea as their new manager.
Derby's manager had resigned.
Now we're going to hear from Mel directly what he's done. Well, we've met Frank Lampard. Obviously, because Frank was a figure for China and Hong Kong, it's disappointing that he's not there. Would you like a cup of coffee?
Yes.
What would you like?
On the way, Samuelson spells out what Mr. X needs to pay to own Derby.
So let's say we paid 50 million for the club, 29 million for the stadium, so 79 million. Their budgets show that they will need 20 million to cover the losses for the coming season. So we're talking of 99 million pounds, 100 million. Welcome to Derby.
Well, Derby are really on top. Players swarming forward now. It's Webster, and it's a superb goal, worthy of the new league champions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mel Morris, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And you. Nice to meet you. Let's have a walk around.
Yeah, sure.
Derby's owner, Mel Morris, is a digital entrepreneur. He's invested nearly $200 million of his own money in the club.
Stadium itself, 33,500 people capacity. Most match days we average out at about 28,000. So the away supporters are in the corner. In that corner.
By pumping his own money into the club, Morris has faced problems over what are called the financial fair play rules. The rules are designed to create a level playing field for clubs. They prevent rich owners buying their way into the Premier League, or the club overspending and falling into debt.
So the choices were either buy the club and finance it, or the club goes into decline over the next several years. I didn't want to see that.
Morris used a company he owned to buy Derby's stadium, effectively buying it from himself. The Football League charged Derby with breaching the financial fair play rules. Morris paid $104 million when the stadium was valued at $53 million. In effect, he was giving the club over $50 million.
It is a great stadium. The atmosphere is fantastic. We also spent a lot of money in the last 2-3 years in upgrading the stadium.
The tribunal ruled that Derby had not broken regulations over the stadium sale. But the club was found guilty of a second FFP charge over how it calculated the value of its players and fined $130,000. Morris's desire to help finance the club continues to bump up against financial fair play regulations.
It may well be that it could be advantageous for some of my loans to the club to continue.
As part of the sale, Morris is prepared to write off his loans, but says it should be done over a number of seasons.
If we write it off at the time of the transaction, the club gets no benefit on the financial fair play regulations.
He wants to become a minority shareholder in order, once again, to get round financial fair play rules.
And when we talk about the structure of a deal, which is something we must not commit in writing, but is important, from the Football League's perspective, I'm no longer a connected party to the football club. I'm a minority shareholder. I have no...
Mel Morris's proposals do not break the letter of the law, from my analysis. It certainly breaks the spirit of the law.
It doesn't benefit me at all. It only benefits the club. But if the sale and purchase agreement documented all that, then you wouldn't get that advantage.
The proposals by Mel Morris will certainly give Derby County, under the new ownership, a financial advantage against other clubs in a similar position. Is that an unfair advantage? I think that would be for the EFL to monitor and to choose whether or not to have charges against the club.
A mistake in the box, he latches onto it and scores again, just when they needed it most.
In London, Samuelson and Hunter warn our undercover reporters to be vigilant, just in case someone is covertly recording their conversation.
If you're in a public place, have noise. People can't listen to you.
They record you.
So you've got to be aware. I know too many of the old tricks. So when we were dealing with the Russians, we had to make sure that it wasn't bugged.
Here they couldn't bug it. It's too difficult. Well, look, there's nothing on the table. Moustache teapot's not going to record it the right side. No,
It's moving.
Here it's fine. Nobody can hear it. But they will just make quite short. Can you hear us? Yes, it's right.
Hunter and Samuelson have concluded that the best way to hide Mr. X's identity from the Football League is to obtain a Cypriot passport.
Have you done this before with
Yeah. Strange enough, not with a Hong Kong Chinese yet, but Indian, Russian, Ukrainian, Nigerian, and the process is seamless. And we've done this many, many times for others who I can assure you are in a worse position than yours. So just, you've got to leave it to us to work it through and make our recommendations and how we can influence things.
And
We've done them before. The different name, we just have to work on. When you deal with Eastern Europeans, Russians, they can change their name slightly, which gives them a different identity. We might just change the date of birth slightly, but everything's possible. Everything's possible.
Hunter says he helped obtain a Cypriot passport for a Russian businessman who fled to the UK and was wanted by Interpol.
The Russian couldn't travel because he was on a red notice. So if he'd have travelled anywhere, he'd have been arrested as soon as he landed.
Instead, according to Hunter, a Cypriot government minister came to London.
The minister flew here to the consulate in St James's Square and managed to do the whole process there without him stepping foot in Cyprus. First time it's happened. Well, he's flying everywhere now. He's been there.
Hunter is preparing a similar due diligence package for Mr. X.
Packaged together because it's got to get through the compliance due diligence check with the locals, but that's fairly simple. To be fair, we leave it to them after that to do the whole process. It's all done as a natural process.
Hunter and Samuelson plan to portray Mr. X as a victim whose rights have been violated.
We'll say that he was attacked and his assets were stolen.
Yes.
Remember, Cyprus is extremely used to this happening in the case of Russians. All the time.
But the minister that's going to help us is over from Cyprus. So we will have a discussion as to how best we do it.
the minister.
And he's been consulted with on everyone that I've dealt with. And the guys that actually live in Cyprus that I deal with, Tony and Chris, they consult with him all the time, all unofficial, but he just helps streamline things.
Tony Kay is an estate agent who connects Cyprus's property business with the island's citizenship by investment program. Chris refers to Christakis Giovanni, a member of the Cypriot Parliament. We are not told the name of the minister.
The people are genuine and real and at the highest level.
The good thing is we're dealing with the government, with the top of the government. And it's just a question of how much will it cost.
The Cyprus investment program allowed foreigners to obtain a European Union passport for a $3 million investment. Under Cypriot law, convicted criminals, or those facing criminal charges, were barred from receiving citizenship. An email spells out how much Mr. X must pay to receive his passport.
Dear Billy, last evening I attended Keefe's box at Epsom Races and met Chris Giovanni and Antonis Antoniou, who handle obtaining Cypriot passports.
Antonis Antoniou is the executive director of the MP Chris Giovanni's property development company.
Their discussion resulted in the minister saying that the passport would be issued within 8 weeks, providing the investment was 10 million euros.
In Cyprus, our undercover reporters discover that the additional $7 million payment is not through the official scheme.
Where there are problems, it costs more money to achieve these things.
Tony Kay is the estate agent.
So what we will do is find out who has to be spoken to, who has to be paid.
A series of enablers greet our undercover reporters based on Hunter's word.
Keith is a good friend and I've worked with him for many years.
Tony's wife, Denise, is the sister of former England and Arsenal captain Tony Adams. She's been involved in selling England match tickets at inflated prices. Another business collapsed with huge debts.
I think it's good if we have an introduction because you know the due diligence has been done on each other. Yeah.
Billy and Angie are taken to meet the MP, Christakis Giovanni.
Billy, we can speak here because there's nobody here. I've explained to Christakis the position of our clients.
We have people take a passport, and why not?
The MP owns one of Cyprus's largest property development businesses.
But I think we have the way.
Tomorrow, what I'd like to do is I'll invite you down to meet the lawyer that we will use. Yes.
We have conviction. We will need to find ways to overcome this problem.
Andreas Pitagis works closely with Giovanni.
Giovanni has a lot of power, he's an MP. I have seen him perform next to miracles, not miracles, but next to miracles. When we know the angels, we don't need God.
Dimitris Salouris, the Speaker of the Cypriot Parliament, says he would provide any support he can to Mr. X using all levels of the state. The lawyer, Pitagis, confirms that Mr. X could change his real name once his new passport is issued.
I have a client that his name now is the name half of United States has. But if you check his original name, he cannot not even travel with that name. So we made an affidavit in Cyprus, changed his name, changed his passport. He's traveling now with his new passport, new name, nobody knows what it is.
Really?
Yes.
This will be of great interest to the police and also the English football authorities. They are up against faulty, fraudulent due diligence reports and a network of enablers seeking to pull the wool over their eyes.
If it wasn't for Keith, I wouldn't accept to see him. I wouldn't even have this conversation. But because I know Keith wouldn't suggest somebody who is a charlatan, who is an imposter, because I trust them.
Cyprus is different from the football league. There may be two different reports needed. Cyprus, I think we can talk through a solution. For the football league, we have to put a spin on it.
I do not want to have to tell the Football League about the Chinese issue unless I have to, and I don't think we need to. And then what we give the Football League is the minimum which they have to have in presented in the right way. We will manage it, we'll just manufacture it. So I'm an expert. When I did the Aston Villa application, I wrote the whole thing myself. But I took the information I needed and left the rest out.
The evidence that I've seen here is very disturbing. Christopher Samuelson is prepared to go beyond the legal position in terms of finding solutions such as false identities and false passports. He is a person that should have nothing to do with football in this country.
Did we do our own due diligence on this man? And my answer to that would be no, we didn't. I think we were led down the garden path.
Football fans should be angry about this investigation because it shows the entire vulnerability of the English football system to funds from dubious origins and unsuitable owners for their clubs.
We want clean money. That's all we want. We don't want dodgy people.
The thing we liked about Mel was that he's a Derby fan. We need an owner who's going to come in and take that same philosophy and really care about the club.
Soon after our visit to Derby, Mr. X pulled out of the sale, so as not to hinder genuine buyers.
We want millionaires who make the money from legitness, and if we get that, the Derby fans will buy into it. We are a community club.
A company led by a member of the Abu Dhabi royal family offered to buy the club in October 2020. Samuelson and the accountant Andrew Obolensky were directors. The deal fell through.
Whoever takes this club on's got to take it on as a long-term prospect, not see it as a cash cow, and really invest.
Derby then announced an agreement to sell the club to a Spanish businessman. That deal also collapsed.
If we keep getting messed around by owners all the time, this club's only going to go one way. We should have fans from every club representing the club, not just greedy billionaires from Russia, China.
There's no regulation. It's just far too easy for anybody to come in, spin lots of yarns, make lots of promises and get away with it without proper checks happening.
Football clubs in England hold a particular place in the heart of everyone. They are part of our history, heritage, community and so on. And as such, they should be protected.
You've got people who've grown up with a club, who've gone with their fathers. I think they're passionate about their brand and the integrity of the club as well.
Football's for the fans. It's not for these Super League owners.
They want a club they can be proud of, from the board to the ball boy.
A football club isn't a business like a factory or a supermarket. It's something far more important than that. It means so much to supporters going back generations.
But without fans, football's nothing.